It's one of the most famous paintings in history, Vermeer's Girl with the Pearl Earring, a masterpiece of light, shadow, mystery. But there's just one problem. That pearl, it may not be a pearl at all. Now, Vermeer didn't name the painting. That title was coined about 200 years later. Originally, it was known by generic descriptions like girl in a turban or head of a girl in exotic dress. It wasn't until the early 20th century that it began to be called Girl with a Pearl Earring, and let's be honest, that sounds a lot better. The glowing mystery jewel in this painting steals the show, even though it may not be what it claims to be. So today we're going to explore a little art history, science, and pearls in history to uncover the truth behind the so-called pearl. Don't worry, I promise this won't feel like a boring art history lecture from one of your least favorite professors. Okay, let's start with the first and most obvious clue, the massive size of this earring. Pearls of this size in the 17th century were practically unheard of. It wasn't until the 1900s that humans discovered how to farm or culture pearls, so a 17th century pearl had to be a gift from nature. And with some saltwater oysters, your chances of finding one could be as little as 1 in 10,000. When a diver would find a pearl, it was often small or baroque in shape, not like this. If this were a real pearl in the painting, it'd be one of the largest and most beautifully shaped pearls in the world. No doubt it would make its way to the collection of a king or a queen. Thus, a pearl like this would be astronomically expensive and likely not available for a painter to use on a model. It'd be like me asking the Museum of Natural History in DC to lend me the Hope Diamond for a photo shoot. Even La Peregrina, one of the most famous pearls in history, may not be as perfect as what we see in Vermeer's painting. So, unless this girl had a secret sugar daddy from the Spanish royal family, something doesn't add up. All this said, it's a good time to mention that this painting is what's known as a trony. A trony wasn't a portrait of a particular person, it was a character study. A painting of a type of person. Think of like a soldier or a scholar, an old man or a young woman, or in this case, a mysterious girl in exotic dress. They were often meant to showcase a painter's skill at rendering character, rendering emotion, and they were cheaper than commissioned portraits and very popular at the time. So it's very possible Vermeer didn't even use a live model at all. If so, we wouldn't know who she is, and that in itself is a huge clue. And if he did use a real model, well, she definitely didn't walk in wearing a pearl fit for a queen. Now let's dig in a little bit more. If this were a real pearl, we'd expect to see, well, what we see in pearls, a soft glow that gives the pearls their characteristic beauty. But what do we see instead? A single, stark, bright reflection, almost like a mirror, and that's not how pearls work. You see, pearls whisper, this thing's screaming. Real pearls don't create a hard, bright headlight like this. Instead, they have a much softer interplay with light, and what Vermeer painted looks more like a smooth, very reflective surface, maybe like polished metal or glass. So then what if this isn't a pearl? What if we've been hyping up a piece of polished tin or glorified glass for centuries? Now this is where things get interesting. In the 1600s, imitation pearls made of glass were becoming very popular. There were also sophisticated handcrafted beads coated in a substance made from fish scales that mimicked the appearance and slightly gritty texture of natural pearls. It was a process invented by a French rosary maker named Jacquin. Yes, I said fish scales. Makes me wonder if people knew that they were wearing fish on their neck. If this was a glass bead earring in the painting, that could explain why the earring had such a strong, singular reflection. It's behaving more like a polished glass bead than an organic pearl. Some people say it may also have the characteristics of polished metal. As I alluded to earlier, maybe it's a polished tin earring. Vermeer wasn't the only artist painting pearls at the time, and that gives us some more clues. Other painters of the time, like Peter Lely and Michel van Meervelt, also painted women wearing pearl earrings and pearl necklaces. But if you compare these to Vermeer's, something feels a little off. As you can see here, these other artists captured the soft glow and multi-layered reflection of real pearls. Vermeer's, it looks more like a shiny metal or bead. Of course, Vermeer wasn't just a painter, he was known as a master of light. And like many artists, he often took artistic liberties to make his paintings feel more luminous and more dramatic. In fact, scientific analysis from the Mauritshuis Museum revealed that Vermeer painted the so-called pearl using just a few brush strokes, literally just a dab of lead white and a soft edge. Under a microscope, you can see it's not detailed or iridescent like a real pearl would be. It's an illusion, a really good one. Even X-ray fluorescence scans and pigment mapping support this. The earring lacks the complex layering you'd expect from a real pearl. There's no intricate buildup of translucent paint to mimic a pearl's orient. Instead, he added a bright highlight that behaves more like the polished metal or the glass that we've mentioned, or even tinfoil in perfect studio lighting. Dutch astrophysicist Vincent Icke examined the painting, and he concluded that the reflection behaves more like metal or glass than a pearl. His words, too pear-shaped, too metallic, and too big to have come from the sea. And listen, if an astrophysicist thinks your jewelry looks suspicious, you might want to double check it. But I think Martine Hosling, director of the Mauritshuis, summed it up best when she said, "It's neither a pearl nor glass, simply paint." Boom, case closed. Now let's flip the script for a second. What if Vermeer meant for us to believe this was a real pearl, even knowing full well that such a gem would have been far too rare and expensive for a common girl? What if he called it girl in a pearl earring, but he just never wrote it down or told any of his buddies? Well, then we'd have to ask, what was he trying to say? We'll explore that. First, maybe it was a fantasy. He gave this anonymous girl the jewel of a queen. It's an aspirational moment, an exciting what if to ponder. What if this simple girl had something that luxurious? It turns her from a servant into a story. Second, pearls at this point in history had always symbolized purity, wisdom, virtue. And by placing a pearl this magnitude on her ear, maybe Vermeer is saying the real jewel isn't dangling from the ear, it's the girl herself. Third, remember this is a tronie. He's constructing a theatrical image, not a real person. So if he did have a pearl in mind, maybe the pearl completes the fantasy, much like a prop would on a stage. So was she wearing a real pearl? Almost certainly not. But Vermeer gave us something better. He gave us mystery, glamour, and the world's most debated piece of jewelry. That earring may have come from a bead box, not the sea, but it's become one of the most iconic pearls in art history. And maybe that's the real masterpiece here, not what's hanging from her ear, but the fact that we're still talking about it 360 years later. So what do you think? Was Vermeer's famous earring a real pearl, or was it something else? Did I convince you? Did I get something wrong? Let me know in the comments. I try to answer them all. And please do not forget to subscribe. We're getting close to 100,000 subscribers, you guys, all talking about pearls. And if you're still here, that means you like pearls. You like art history. I do too. So I hope you join my YouTube family, and we can do this much more often. I'll see you next time.